Hello, people of God. Welcome to our today's episode on Let's Keep Our Education Catholic. Today, we are honored to have a special guest with us, Sister Margaret Eder, from the Congregation of Sisters of St. Felix of Cantalis, popularly known as the Felician Sisters. Sister Margaret has dedicated many years to Catholic education in the United States, serving as both a teacher and a principal. So she's here to share her experiences and insights on the state of Catholic school education today. Welcome, Sister Margaret.
Thank you, Sister Augustina. It's good to be here with you.
Thank you. Amen. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Sister. I know we've often discussed the importance of Catholic education, reflecting on its past, present, and future, drawing from your extensive experience, can you compare your past experiences with the present and where you would like to see Catholic education in the future? Could you give us like 3 or 4 areas where you will see improvement and areas where more work needs to be done?
Well, certainly I can give you experience starting from 1960 because that was my first year teaching. And my last year teaching was in 1975. Then I became principal. My last year being principal was in 1990 or so. And then I was a school counselor from then on and doing clinical counseling. And so really working with teachers, principals, parents, and children. So I can compare from down those 3 categories. So in 1960, when I started teaching, it was just so delightful. We had so many Catholic schools. Every parish had a Catholic school, and there were so many parishes. And at each school or each parish, there were many, many sisters. So my first year teaching, I was in a school of 1,400 children, and there were 23 sisters at the convent, and we all taught in school, and we had only one lay teacher in the whole school. That was the first lay teacher ever to teach in that school. And it was delightful. It was just wonderful. And I had first communion that first year to teach the children for their first communion class, first confession also. And so there were a lot of real Catholic experiences. We would go to Mass with the kids every week, one day, it seems like it was. And so there were a lot of really nice religious experiences. As time went on, there were fewer and fewer sisters. So my last year teaching, it was about half and half. No, even less. It was more than half lay teachers when I went toward the end of my teaching career. And when I went into becoming principal, it was already, I had to pay more attention to the finances and things like that then. Before that, we sisters, when I started teaching, we only got $75 a month. And so that was $750 for the year. By the time I was principal, the diocese already had created a really professional contract for the lay teachers. And eventually it went to the sisters also. And the sisters' salary scale was lower than the lay teachers, but the lay teachers, it still was not what it would be in a public school, but it was, I'd say a fair salary. And so I had the experience as principal of hiring teachers who had all the qualifications, that they had gone through the interview with the diocese. They were put on a salary scale. They signed their contract. with the diocese, and then they signed it with me. And I had the experience of assigning them to the appropriate level of education, those that were good with older kids, or those that were better dealing with younger children, those who had a good background in religious studies, so that I could count on them to really teach the religion classes well. So being a principal was an entirely different experience. And sometimes with some lay teachers, they would ask, could they have departmental classes with a sister and let the sister teach their religion for them, and they would teach social studies or something at the same time in the other class. And they would do departmental, and that way sometimes we covered religion classes by letting the sister teach more religion, because there were fewer and fewer sisters, and that way the kids would get to know a sister, but they would also get to know a lay teacher who was so well prepared too. So that's how things changed, like in the 70s or so. And by the 90s, I was so pleased to become, by that time, I had another you have to have a master's to be a principal, and also certain level classes in Chicago, in America. You have to have a certificate, not just for teaching, but also for being a principal. It's called administrative endorsement, I think, something like that. And then by the time I got another master's in counseling, it was clinical counseling. And before that, I had school counseling degree. And so that was really an adventure. So from the 1990s till 2021, when I retired, I had the most unusual experiences in schools, because by that time I knew all the different roles. And so I could work with the principal, I could work with the parents, I could work with the children, the teachers. And I knew what I was observing too. And I knew by that time you kind of have a feel if a child has got trouble in school. Very often, a child has very serious trouble. I had a child once whose mother I had children who were treated very violently, and they were having a post-traumatic stress disorder. I had children who had been abandoned and then taken into another family in their relationship. And there was that sorrow, that hurt, that loss that child had. I had children whose parents were divorcing, or a parent died, or a parent was very ill. I had children who were bullied by others. I had children who were not good at learning. I had children who were every imaginary thing everything you could imagine that could cause a child having trouble learning. I felt that was where everything came together for me, because all that previous experience I could use in that role. And I would meet when a child was referred for professional help, when I started out, I would have I had 5 different schools. It would be my Monday school, my Tuesday school, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday school. And so I'd have a caseload on Mondays, and I would sign up those 8 or so children and give them the appointment, and they would know that at that certain time they had their appointment, and I would come and get them. And so it was weekly, and it was an ongoing thing, and I was able to, adapt the type of counseling to the level that they needed, to the the type of problem that they were coming with and the type of counseling they needed. And my license at that time was a counseling license for the state of Illinois. But some of the workers, we had one of the sisters, my friend actually, Sister Kim, she started with her doctorate, she started a counseling agency that we had 100 counselors, but they weren't just counselors, they were like, I should say therapists. We called ourselves therapists because we were in different roles. Some were psychologists, some were social workers, and some were like I was a clinical counselor with a pastoral counseling background. And so each one was different, and she would assign us to the schools according to the need of that school. If a counselor spoke Spanish, she'd be at a Spanish school. If a male counselor might be at a school where some of the older boys were having a lot of trouble. She divided our boss, we were in 40 schools with 100, I'm saying therapists, okay? Because they were at all different levels of education. And so I feel that that was like the epitome for me. I think that was one of the things that really, when our schools started just closing for financial reasons and because not enough sisters, and even though we had lay teachers, they're very good lay teachers, but it became so expensive because when you give a proper salary to a lay teacher,
Yeah.
a lot harder to keep the school funded.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sister Margaret, for the work you did. That is really incredible. Thank you for supporting these individuals and also for supporting their families. Um, that was really great. I know you are happy, you were happy doing that because I also know from my experience to serving in Catholic schools, it has always been fulfilling, especially when you see the positive impact of your hard work, right? And it's not just a job, it's a service driven by passion, just as you have shared a passion and a mandate of Jesus Christ to spread the gospel. Many religious persons, especially in your time, just as you have shared, we are so committed to this mission, not for financial gain. You shared how much you received. It was just a stipend. But you did it for a conviction, to teach these young boys and girls Christian values alongside academics. Thank you, sister, for sharing. It's truly inspiring, to hear about that dedication. However, we've seen a significant decline, in the number of Catholic schools enrollments and with many schools closing down. So do you think the absence of religious persons has contributed to this? And what are some of the key impacts of having religious persons in Catholic schools?
I think that the days when we had many religious, that was really a high time of the Catholic schools. And I hope for Nigeria, for United States, I hope that children could have the experience of having someone dedicated to the church, dedicated to God. I think it's good for a child to know that that's a way of life that's possible. But I would never say that our lay teachers don't do as good of a job. So what contributed to all? I think the fact, yes, we had fewer sisters, but we have fewer sisters because it became too expensive to run schools. That's really, it was financial, and we need funding from other sources that would provide reasonable salaries for lay teachers. Our lay teachers know they'll get a lower salary than the public schools. but they need to have a living wage anyway. And so we need other sources that would be able to help us fund our schools. And we don't have enough of that now. And yes, that contributed. And the fact that there are fewer sisters. And you know what? I think it's somehow or other, it's in God's plan. There are fewer sisters because I think God is calling persons to other ways of serving Him. And God knows His reason why He's doing that. So it can't be bad, but it is happening, that's for sure.
Okay. I know you have shared the impacts. Are there some other impacts of religious persons in Catholic schools that you want to share with us?
I would say the impact of religion, are you, I wanted to clarify this. Are you thinking of the impact of religious sisters and religious brothers and priests?
I mean, both religious men and women. What are some of the key impacts of having religious persons in Catholic schools, both priests and religious?
One thing is, I think many persons feel the school, there's something about a child having a sister or a teacher that that child remembers. But there's something about a good lay teacher too, that that child will always remember. And sometimes the best teacher could be the lay teacher. But what religious sisters and priests and brothers do, it gives the impression this is a church school. This is a school that is tied with the church somehow. And that's really good for them to know. I mean, you know, as we take the children to church, to mass, but so do the lay teachers. And so it can be just as much a Catholic school. There are some Catholic schools now that have no sisters. Right here in this city, run completely by lay teachers. But the impact of sisters was great. I know it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a hard one to answer because this is how it is now in America. I hope it's not that way in Nigeria. I hope God continues in all of Africa to call many to religious life. But God's doing something different here.
Amen. Sister, thank you. The challenge is everywhere. Of course, absolutely. The presence of religious persons, whether in Nigeria or in America, everywhere, their presence in Catholic schools have had profound impacts, and that can't be overstated at all. So they brought and they continue to bring a unique spiritual dimension and commitment. However, I must also, just like you said, commend our lay Catholic teachers, our lay Catholic educators who are doing incredible work. Because without their dedication, many more Catholic schools would have closed by now globally. So we owe a great deal of gratitude to our lay Catholic educators. So thank you to all our lay Catholic educators for your invaluable service. As we look into the future, sister, what advice would you give to the church, regarding the future of our Catholic schools?
Some of the advice I would give is be sure that the salaries are fair, that the hiring procedures are fair and professional, that the contract is well done. Make sure that the diocese is assisting the school, or that the school principal, or however it works, that the school is working with the diocese, that it's tied closely to the church, following church advice and everything. I would also say another thing for the future of schools, not only that they be well run professionally, and also that our Catholic schools would also be top-notch in relation to public schools. Whatever the government is saying, like for us it's a state, our state in the United States, whatever they say for the school or the city, we should follow that. We Catholic schools should follow that too, but with our additional professional, very professional role of passing on the Catholic faith to the children and making them to love the Catholic faith. And so I kind of think that maybe that's what I have to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you kindly, Sister Margaret, for your incredible service to humanity and your continued commitment, to the growth of Catholic schools. Your voice, filled with wisdom and experience, is very essential in reminding us of our roots. For those of us still serving in Catholic schools, your insights provide the strength and inspiration to forge ahead. God bless you for all your contributions. To my listeners, I invite you to share your experiences and thoughts of how we can best support our Catholic schools. Your feedback and ideas are vital as we work together to sustain and strengthen our educational mission. Until next time, this is Sister Augustina Mbata reminding us to keep our education Catholic. Goodbye and God bless.
Goodbye and God bless.